Welcome back to the Pain of Progress Series 4, Civilizations. Last week we went through the first dynasties from ancient China up to the chaos of the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period. I am once again honored to be back with the second half of our story, starting with the Qing Dynasty and bringing us up to the present day. Our story continues in the year 960 CE, when the army endorses General Zhou Huangying as Emperor Taizu after China was mostly reunified. This begins the Qing Dynasty. The relative stability of the reigns of the first 2 emperors helped the Qing dynasty become one of the most successful of the 13 other dynasties. China became the first country to issue paper currency nationally under this dynasty. They also established the first permanent standing navy in China. This dynasty was divided into 2 periods: the Northern Qing, where the capital was in Bianying and ran from 960 CE to 1127 CE. The Southern Qing continued from 1127 until 1279, with the capital moved to Lin'an after losing control of the northern areas of China. The Qing court maintained diplomatic relations with Chola India, the Fatimid Caliphate of Egypt, Srivijaya the Karakhanid Khanate of Central Asia, and the Goryeo Kingdom of Korea, and others. To the north of the Qing-held territories, the Jurchen tribe in the Liao state rebelled and formed the Qing Dynasty. The Qing and the Jurchens formed an alliance and defeated the Liao by 1125. The Jurchens immediately turned on the Qing, starting the Jin-Qing Wars and forcing the Qing dynasty south to Lin'an in 1127, thus starting the Southern Qing period. China's first permanent navy was established in 1132, based out of Dinghai. This navy was very effective in the battles of Tangdao and Kaishi against the Jin, winning both battles. There was a new threat to the north, however. The Mughals had defeated the Western Shah and Qing dynasties by 1234. The Qing were not defeated until 1279, when the Yuan dynasty was formed. Before these defeats, however, there were many contributions that the Qing dynasty had made in many areas. During the 12th century CE, the physician and judge Song Si wrote of the examination of corpses in order to determine the cause of death and whether that death occurred as a result of murder, suicide, or accidental death. He stressed the importance of proper conduct during these inquiries and the accurate recording of these inquests by official clerks. In the military arena, the invention of gunpowder and flamethrowers aided in battles tremendously. Economically, there were many advancements as well. Artisans and merchants formed guilds that the government had to deal with when assessing taxes, requisitioning goods, setting workers' wages, and settling prices on goods produced. During the 11th century, the jiaozi, an early promissory note, became the first paper money in history. To measure distance, the Chinese relied on a mechanical odometer. This was a wheeled carriage that marked units of distance with drums or bells. During the Qing dynasty, the mechanical odometer was combined with an apparatus called the south-pointing chariot. Invented in the 3rd century by Ma Jun, it used a differential gear to keep a figure on the vehicle to always point south. The concept of the differential gear is now found in modern automobiles to apply an equal amount of torque to a car's wheels, even when and if they are rotating at different speeds. Shen Kuo was the first to determine the magnetic declination of true north during experiments with a compass in the 11th century. He also put forward the theory that geographical climates gradually shifted over time. Su Song built an astrological clock tower in Kaifeng, and he published a celestial atlas with star charts featuring a cylindrical projection. Of the Qing dynasty in 1271 marks the beginning of the Yuan dynasty, which held on to power until 1368 CE. The Mongol Empire has been wanting to rule China for some time. The Qing dynasty resisted for over 10 years before finally falling in 1271. This is the first time that China was united in over 300 years. Kublai Khan then declared the Great Yuan dynasty had begun, and he declared himself Emperor of China and the Great Khan. During the Yuan dynasty, China became more culturally diverse. Drama and the novel were developed. Trade with the West also became a cultural exchange. The Persians and Tibetan Buddhism were also a great influence. The Muslims introduced cartography, astronomy, medicine, clothing, and diet to China. China also had a great influence by introducing purified saltpeter, printing techniques, porcelain, playing cards, and medical literature to Europe and Western Asia. Guo Shujing helped the Yuan reform the lunisolar calendar to provide an accuracy of 365.25 days of the year, which was only off the modern Gregorian calendars by around 26 seconds. He was one of the first mathematicians to work on spherical trigonometry. Muslims brought Arabic numerals to China in the 13th century. Kublai Khan established the Imperial Academy of Medicine to manage the education of new doctors. The physician Wai Yilin invented a suspension method for reducing dislocated joints, performed under anesthetics. Hu Sihui promoted the benefits of a healthy diet in 1330. In 1273, the government created the Imperial Library Directorate, a printing office sponsored by the government. Schools and government agencies were funded to support the printing and publishing of books. The private printing industry published and printed educational, literary, medical, religious, and historical texts. Jiaoqiao was the printed currency of the Yuan dynasty. It was printed on the bark of mulberry trees. Between 1271 and 1295, Marco Polo traveled the Silk Road through Asia. His books, The Travels of Marco Polo and Book of the Marvels of the World, told the stories of his travels and his work with the imperial court of the Yuan dynasty. His detailed descriptions of China and Eastern Asia sparked interest in more trade, travel, and cultural exchanges. After the end of the reign of Timur Oljetu, unfortunately, the Yuan dynasty started its decline. The government was divided between pro-Chinese and pro-Mongol factions. This caused great disruption and sometimes violence. There was also a combination of unusually cold winters, famines, plagues, and flooding that caused the citizenry to become overly taxed and very resentful. In 1368, the Mongols were driven out of China and back to Mongolia. The leader of this rebellion and the Red Turban movement declared himself the Hongwu Emperor, thus beginning the Ming Dynasty. Emperor Hongwu immediately restructured the government as soon as he took power. He abolished the chancellery and named himself the chief executive. He also established the Jinyuai, which was a network of secret police who came from his palace guard. Sadly, many people were executed by the secret police. In 1421, Emperor Yongle moved the capital from Nanjing to Beijing, enlarging the city and protecting it with a 10-meter-high wall that was 15 kilometers long. The Great Wall of China was repaired to aid in the northern border's defense. After an initial slowdown in trade during the early years of the Ming Dynasty, international trade was once again promoted. Brand new products were introduced to China from the New World, like sweet potatoes, maize, tomatoes, peanuts, and tobacco. Some of these things could be grown locally in China in areas not suitable for native crops, with a new boom in food production. One of the biggest contributions to the history of China that is still standing today is the Forbidden City, built in Beijing beginning in 1407. Used throughout both the Ming and Qing dynasties, it was continuously restored and expanded upon until it covered a total of 7.2 square kilometers. The Forbidden City not only held the imperial residence, it also held various government offices. The forbidden part of the name comes from the controlled access to the complex, as only high-ranking officials and ambassadors invited by the emperor were allowed inside. There were many other cultural achievements as well. The Ming rulers reinstated the traditional civil service exams and established a quota so that the richer areas did not dominate in government and everyone got fairer representation. More schools opened, meaning that poorer children could receive the education necessary to pass the exams. Chinese classical literature was a requirement in education. More books were written and published than ever before, making them more accessible. There were books on any subject imaginable, including good living, etiquette, classic text commentaries, military treatises, exam preparation notes, woodblock print collections, anthologies of poetry, erotic works, and even fiction. During the reign of Emperor Yongle, the Yongle Dadian was created. It was an encyclopedia of all the important Chinese literary works that had survived up to that point in history. Sadly, most of the 22,000 chapters were lost during the end of the Ming Dynasty and during the Boxer Rebellion. The remaining 800 chapters are in various museums outside China. Of course, I would be derelict in my duties as a storyteller if I did not include Ming blue and white porcelain in my story. This pottery was exported with unprecedented success. The crafting techniques had reached new levels of craftsmanship and was appreciated by others who had not yet learned to make it. The foliage motifs and landscape scenes were imitated around the world, from the United Kingdom to Japan. Not only were there the famous vases, there were also many items from desk accessories to bird feeders. Alas, all dynasties must come to an end, and the Ming Dynasty was not immune to the same ills as all the others before it. There were extremely expensive wars, then a drop in average temperatures, floods, and droughts that caused widespread famine. Rebellions rose up, with one finally capturing Beijing in 1645. Military commanders in the northeast of China, upon hearing of the capture of Beijing, decided to let the Manchu army in. Not only did they put down the rebellion, the Manchu founded their own dynasty, which brings us to the Qing Dynasty. The Qing, or Great Qing Dynasty, was the last dynasty to rule in China, with it lasting from 1644 until 1912. Once in power, the Qing emperor made sure that the same form of government continued that was used by the Ming Dynasty, and used many of the Ming Dynasty officials. This helped warm the populace to the new dynasty. During the second emperor's reign, territory expanded to include Outer Mongolia, Tibet, Zungaria, Turkestan, and Nepal. During the first half of the Qing dynasty, commerce and handicrafts industries continued to prosper. Roman Catholic missionaries were welcome and used as astronomers and artists. The second half of the dynasty, however, was plagued by problems caused by the ever-increasing population, the deterioration of the Manchu armies, and popular unrest. Adding to this were severe floods and famines. All of these issues led to a string of rebellions and wars, further weakening the imperial court. Conservative officials were against modernization and westernization, as well as having issues with inefficiency and corruption in the bureaucracy. The First Opium War, the Anglo-French War, the Sino-Japanese War, and the Boxer Rebellion all resulted in losses and concessions to foreign powers. Around the turn of the century, the rumblings of revolution are beginning. The Republican Revolution on the 10th of October 1911 led to the transfer of power to the provisional government and the abdication of the last Qing dynasty emperor, thus ending imperial rule in China. The Qing dynasty had some great cultural achievements, and much survives to this day. For most artists, there was a preference for literati painting, meaning personal expression above anything else in their artwork. Two classes of porcelainware were developed during this period, both the famille verte and the famille rose, items with green and rose-colored themes. In literature, novels of romance and adventure were developed substantially. Translations from other languages into Chinese flourished, bringing even more outside influences. In popular culture today, Imperial China is remembered favorably. It is seen as benevolent, strong, and very advanced. The current communist leaders claim that their policies are restoring China's glory. The current General Secretary has promised to restore China to its historical glory. Thank you so much for listening to my story of China's 13 dynasties tonight. It was my honor to bring it to you. There are many, many people throughout the 5,000-year history who helped shape China and its history and culture, all things that we enjoy today. There are, however, many who have suffered the pain of progress.